Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai. Well, we got once again, a full newsreel. We're going to start off though with Parliament and the joke that is the never-ending same old Liberal Party of the last decade. The West is it's no wonder every time Carney or any of these Liberals open their mouth, more and more people out West are ready to sign on the dotted line and get out of Dodge. Absolutely ridiculous. Let's just tie right into this. Carney, after 7-8 questions, he ends up fleeing, and it's just an entire gong show. I'm not gonna go throughout the whole circuit. I'm just gonna play kind of the first few major questions, and yeah, well, you know what? Let's just hear it because you have to hear it to believe it. It's a joke.
Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to welcome the Prime Minister to his first official question period. This is where democracy lives, and this is where we provide rigorous scrutiny on every word he says and every dollar he spends on behalf of Canadians. Now, let's talk about those words and dollars. During the election campaign, it was elbows up as he put retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. Then secretly, he dropped those tariffs to effectively zero. But he didn't stop there. He told Canadians that the government would collect $20 billion in revenue from those tariffs and use it to cost his platform. Now that those tariffs are going to bring in $0, two quick questions. Why wasn't he honest with Canadians during the election? And how's he going to make up the shortfall? Is he going to borrow it, print it, or tax it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, may I first thank my constituents from Nepean for giving me the honour of being here. And could you also indulge me to say how great it is to see you in the Speaker's chair, and I trust that you're operating under the period of grace that will not be accorded to me. Appropriately, as the Leader of the Opposition just said. Mr. Speaker, our tariffs have maximum impact on the United States, minimum impact on Canada, and we are dedicating all the revenues from those tariffs to supporting the workers and businesses affected by the unjustified American actions.
Hear, hear.
Now, I pointed this out for months. All of the food prices, the 25% tariffs he put on, are affecting Canadians. Literally, there isn't a single hairbrushes, sunglasses, rubber boots, rubber duckies, anything food, processed chicken, turkey, beef, everything. All of that is being tariffed. Now, it only makes up for a small percentage. It's 13% or something of our total, trade surplus or whatever it's being. Actually, I shouldn't say that. That's wrong. That's the American side. They're only tariffing 13%. If you break down it in its entirety, it's 99.6% is tariff free. Is what that's what the States is not tariffing. So Canada, on the other hand, is tariffing pretty much every single item that the middle class and lower incomes purchase. I will attach the page to the tariffs once again. All my evidence is always in the bottom. All the links are in the bottom. Scroll through it. He's nailing middle class and lower incomes to try and hide the carbon tax removal. We already saw a 1.7% drop in inflation when they got rid of it, but that's only because of the fuel. Now imagine if he took the tariffs off of the food, how far that rate would drop. It would be substantial. Just top of the hand, top of the mind, probably 2.2, 2.4% drop in inflation. The guy is the Liberal Party hasn't changed These guys are beyond evil. It's just unbelievable. And the fact that so many people fell for all of this crap is just so frustrating. And the lies. And he's doing it till this day.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, he didn't take long to pick up old Liberal habits of not being able to answer questions. But since the election, Canadians have been inundated with grand rhetoric and pretty speeches from this Liberal Party, but they are still suffering under all those policies. Household debt up at record levels, number of people who can't pay their mortgages increasing, food bank use continuing to rise. Now TD Bank is forecasting a recession with hundreds of thousands of lost jobs. The PM said undoing the damage of the last 10 years would require great speed, but he's not going to table a budget for 6 months. If he's the man with the plan and the guy you hire in a crisis, why won't he table a budget before he goes on summer vacation?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I understand the member of the opposition is very busy. Didn't have a chance to study closely the 100-day plan of the former member from Ottawa, Carleton, which did not include a budget. Our plan includes legislating. Our plan includes legislating for one Canadian economy and nation-building projects immediately to grow this economy, and we expect the support from all in this House.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
They must be really afraid to come clean with Canadians if they're going to punt it off into the fall. But, Mr. Speaker, with the throne speech yesterday, Liberals have effectively admitted that it was their policies that caused the suffering for Canadians. Their reckless borrowing and massive deficits caused the inflation. The carbon tax drove up prices and drove away investment. And their anti-development bills chased jobs out of Canada. Now, the Prime Minister is claiming that somehow the Liberals have changed. Well, he has a chance to prove it to Canadians. If he's serious, will he tell Canadians that pipelines are part of his values by repealing Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines bill?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Canada's new government is acting immediately to grow.
Can't even hold a straight face when he says it. New government. Too many gullible Canadians out there. Way too many.
This economy. I just made my maiden speech in this House. Canada's new government, Mr. Speaker, is acting immediately to grow this economy. One Canadian economy out of 13. Nation-building projects. One project office. Working with the provinces to cooperate. We expect the support from the members opposite.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister campaigned on the slogan, the man with a plan, but the problem is that he's refusing to tell Canadians what that plan is. A budget would have been a plan. The Liberals are going to go over a year without tabling a budget. That's never happened since the 60s. But what we do know is that this Prime Minister is determined to spend even more than Justin Trudeau, and he's refusing to tell Canadians how he intends to spend their money. What is the Prime Minister trying to hide about this Liberal government's finances? Mr. Speaker, the new Canadian government has a plan. It has a daring plan, an ambitious plan to bring together the Canadian economy, have one economy instead of 13, and in order to create new projects to build this great nation. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, what I'm seeing in front of me is the same ministers, the same government that's been in place for 10 years. We know the result of 10 years of this Liberal government. And what we have now, yes, is a new Prime Minister, but a Prime Minister with no plan. He said he had one, but he doesn't want to table a budget because he knows perfectly well that his plan is disastrous and that our public finances are in a terrible state. Will this Prime Minister commit to tabling a budget before the summer? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yeah, and I got to make that point. I mean, if this guy's supposed to be some infamous banker, top-notch, this guy knows money, he's been leading the Liberals' economy for that, since literally printed for 2.5 years, and we've known 4.5 years ago that he was already advising this Liberal Party. if this guy can't come up and balance the books and show a budget within the, like, literally he should have been able, because he was already prime minister before the election, he had the time. If he was serious about his job, if he was seriously committed to being transparent and honest, he would have had a budget build the first day after the election. It's all smoke and mirrors, gaslighting, lies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government will act immediately to cut taxes on the middle class by hundreds of dollars for the average family.
It's like 52 cents a day. 52 cents a day. It's not a tax cut. It's a joke.
We will also reduce or remove GST on new home builds. We have a plan, and we will be bringing in that plan immediately. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, a few weeks ago, we were having an election campaign. And during the election campaign, we heard a lot about the threats of Donald Trump. Now, this government brought in retaliatory tariffs against Donald Trump, but then they discreetly took away those tariffs during the campaign. But they didn't say anything about it because they wanted to make sure that Canadians would stay scared. But now we have a $20 billion budget hole, and that's on top of a budget that already had a heavy deficit. Could we finally get a new budget so that we can understand what's going on with our finances? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The member across the way must have been referring to the Conservative platform when he talked about the $20 billion deficit. Well, that's all right. Well, Mr. Speaker, we
Look at them laughing. It's just an embarrassment. They're actually laughing. They fooled Canadians. This is so embarrassing. They're actually laughing about it.
Tariffs against the Americans, and they will have maximum impact on the United States while having minimum impact in Canada. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the topic that set off this election campaign and the entire basis of the Liberal strategy was the trade and tariff and even the annexation crisis that we've been seeing with Donald Trump. But despite this, yesterday's throne speech, read by a foreign monarch, did not mention trade. It did not mention tariffs. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm wondering how it is that this terrible crisis that got our Prime Minister elected, how did it just get forgotten in the throne speech? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, for those who were there at the throne speech, for those who were there, we heard about transformation in the throne speech, the transformation of the global trade system, which is a crisis for Canada, a security crisis for Canada. We have a daring plan in order to respond to this crisis.
Now,
the Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly.
They weren't there because they were busy doing this.
Madame la Présidente, je sollicite le consentement des membres de cette Assemblée afin de présenter, conjointement avec la chef du deuxième groupe d'opposition, la motion suivante, que l'Assemblée nationale affirme sans équivoque qu'elle est la seule dépositaire de l'expression démocratique du peuple québécois.
And what they were doing
Qu'elle souligne qu'une très
was this: to abolish the link between the state of Quebec and the British monarchy, and to release the vote results to the King and the PM of Canada. Yeah. That's why the Bloc wasn't there. They were actually removing themselves, watching their parliament remove themselves. Provincially, done. Voted in favor, gone. No more monarchy in Quebec. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, the Prime Minister will perhaps agree that some things are clearer when you read them than when you hear them. Now, the King's speech was incredibly centralizing. So centralizing that I think even Justin Trudeau must have felt embarrassed. We heard about a single economy, one Canadian economy, without asking anyone what they thought of that, even though the National Assembly of Quebec unanimously denounced that notion. It seems that for the Prime Minister, Canada is just a country where the provinces are like the branches of a bank that is headquartered in Toronto, the Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are in the middle of an economic crisis. This is a time for unity. Yes, this crisis was created by the Americans, Mr. Speaker. This is a time for unity. This is why my ministers and I, or rather, the premiers and I will meet, the premiers of Quebec and the premiers of all the provinces will meet this weekend in Saskatoon. The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, it's a little bit like a military staff meeting where the general will give orders and expect everyone else to obey. Now, on another subject, let's talk about the climate crisis. That's an issue too, you know. It's causing all sorts of problems.
Yeah, okay, I'm not going to watch any more of that. What I am going to show you, though, is right after the throne speech, and actually while the throne speech was going on in the morning, Trump was reiterating during a presser he doesn't want Canadian gas, oil, lumber, none of it. And then right afterwards, he releases this on Truth. I told Canada, which very much wants to be a part of the fabulous Golden Dome system, that it'll cost $61 billion if they remain a separate but unequal nation, but will cost $0 if they become our cherished 51st state. They are considering the offer. Now, that they are considering the offer, I believe he's referring to the delegation for Western separation that had talks with a whole bunch of different people within his administration. And they are working out some negotiable stuff for when Alberta and Saskatchewan secede. And the more and more that we hear this crap in Parliament, anti-pipeline, anti-energy, period, there's going to be no changes except for your dollar is going to plummet even more. Costs are going to go up. You will own nothing. And if you're a liberal, I guess you're happy. Now, I'm going to go to my favorite MP.
Member for Skeena,
Eli
Bulkley
Ross.
Valley.
Over 9 years, the Liberals' anti-energy laws have weakened our country to the benefit of the United States.
That's right.
Canadian oil and gas piped to the United States provides jobs and revenues for Americans, but not for Canadians. But get this, it's at a discount. Canada's energy potential has been stalled by anti-energy laws from the Liberal government for close to a decade. Will the Prime Minister scrap the job-killing and economy-killing energy production cap?
Yes!
Now, previous episodes, if you're a new subscriber, I talk about him often, what he has done for not only his nation, but all of the other nations that got together with him, fighting the federal government and fighting fake, honky, indigenous, and everybody else who actually doesn't live in his area or see what was going on in those nations from poverty and from federal abuse. He won. They got the pipeline built. Those nations are thriving. This is what every single First Nation needs. And what did most of them vote in the North? NDP and Liberal. Unbelievable. It's just, this guy is a hero, as well as all of the other tribal leaders that were involved in getting that natural gas pipeline built.
The Honourable Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, while my Conservative colleagues are interested in playing politics, I'm interested in getting things built, including pipelines where there is consensus. We will make Canada an energy superpower in both conventional and clean energy by cutting red tape, fast-tracking projects, and approving them within 2 years. This means creating new jobs and growing the economy. We can make Canada strong and protect ourselves from American tariffs if we work together with Indigenous partners, industry, and workers, but also
The honourable member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Good. Time is up.
Even the BC NDP have removed their decarbonization policies for LNG export facilities.
Right.
This is not politics. Even Canada's parliamentary budget officer forecasts a $20.5 billion reduction in GDP and potential job loss of 54,000 full-time jobs under this energy production cap.
Right.
Canada's loss is America's gain.
That's right. Yes.
Again, to the Prime Minister, will the Prime Minister scrap the Canadian job-killing and Canadian economy-killing energy production cap, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
And Carney won't answer. It's okay. Carney's getting ready to shuffle his shoes. He walks out right after he's done. He's a wimp. He can't take it. He can't give answers, and he's all full of lies. This is why Trump wanted the Liberals in power, because it's going to allow Trump to be successful, for him to make America great, while we up north here suffer. Trump doesn't care. He doesn't care that we suffer. All he cares about is the United States of America. Elbows up, you bunch of idiots. Unbelievable, like you guys voted for. Man, I can't believe people voted for this party again. Oh!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank the constituents of Toronto Danforth for giving me this opportunity to stand up for Canada and to build a strong Canada.
Anyways, she just goes on with the rest of the verbal diarrhea. But this whole unity, in the meantime, we've got this going on, which this happened in Saskatoon. I'm trying to get footage of the whole thing so I can break it down for you all, but this is just a small clip I got.
You remember this? I do, very clearly. Screw the West, we'll take the rest. And I remember them saying it, and I couldn't believe it at the time. So here's the thing. Mark Lalonde admitted at that time that it was designed to stop Alberta from becoming an economic power. And guess when transfer payments started?
Right then.
So what was the point of the transfer payments? To weaken the West and strengthen the East, right? Just understand that. It's a very simple equation. All right, here we go. All right, that's Alberta's net contribution. That hasn't got as much to do with you guys in the last 15 years, so I'll just skip by that. There's equalization payments. You see how much Saskatchewan is getting? Right there, that's 25, 26. Pay attention to Quebec at 13.6 billion. Now, Quebec's not a have-not province, right? We're not going to pretend that Quebec's a have-not province. Here's the difference. We work harder than them, so we have more money. But we have more money because we work harder than them. I'm going to say that again. We work harder than them. And because we work harder doesn't mean that they're entitled to our money. That doesn't make any sense. That's not the Canadian way. That's not the way that we do things in this country. If you work hard, you get rewarded for that. And if you think that's a mistake, there's the year before. How much different is it? That is exactly the same way it is every year. 0 for Alberta, 0 for Saskatchewan, 13.3 billion for Quebec. So just understand Quebec has $26 billion in revenue come to them in a 13-month period. So what's the budget of the province of Alberta? $75 billion, and we're $100 billion in debt. But yet, we're paying these guys $13.3 billion a year.
So true. So true. Now let's just roll through some news here really quickly. There's lots going on. So the largest fentanyl seizure press conference was a 24 largest fentanyl seizure in LPS history. 4 men facing a combined total of 117 charges in London. 34.66 kilograms of fentanyl, 4.65 kilograms of crystal methamphetamine, 474 grams of cocaine, 4 handguns, semi-automatic pistol, extended capacity magazines and drum magazines, silencer, ammunition, 17.92 kilograms of a cutting agent, approximately 247,000 Canadian dollars, approximately over $5,000 in American currency. They also seized vehicles. Endless. Why isn't mainstream talking about this? They did mention this one in a little small sub-article, which is kind of nice. The Canadian Border Service operation leads to seizure of fentanyl and other narcotics. Kilos of fentanyl and other narcotics were seized by Canada Border Services Agency as a result of a large-scale operation. During the operation, Border Services officers examined shipments with a special focus on mail, air, freight, and sea containers going to the United States. Operation Blizzard was a month-long cross-country campaign by the CBSA to intercept fentanyl and other illegal drugs in postal, air cargo, and marine containers. There was a total of 2,600 seizures. Of those, 67.5% were illegal narcotics coming to Canada from the U.S., while 17.5% were going to the U.S. A total of 116 fentanyl shipments were seized, including 1.73 kilograms intercepted in British Columbia, Quebec, and Alberta. Of these seizures, 1.44 kilograms was destined for the United States. There'll be more details to come, they say. Right. Let's just dabble on to Polyev after question period.
Yesterday, the government tabled a Ways and Means motion with regards to 3 tax measures. Now, I'll just take a very brief trip down memory lane, not to go too far back, but of course, we Conservatives have been leading a crusade for lower taxes, to axe the carbon tax and the GST off new homes, to cut income taxes. And of course, when we proposed this, the Liberals said we were crazy, and now all of a sudden they are at least in part plagiarizing our policy proposals and adopting modified and watered-down versions of them. Their motion will partly eliminate the carbon tax, the GST off homes, and give a very modest, very tiny income tax cut. So tiny that it would be barely enough to buy you a cup of coffee every week at a Starbucks. But it's better than nothing. Conservatives came here to fight for lower taxes and more purchasing power. And so we are going to put forward amendments to this motion that will get rid of the entire carbon tax for everyone, for real, for good. We also push for the GST to come off of more homes so that we can encourage more building and more buying. And we'll push for a bigger income tax cut that people will actually notice so that hard work really does pay off for a change. Finally, we are going to push for cuts in bureaucracy, consultants, corporate welfare, and foreign aid so that we can match the lost revenue with lower spending in order to avoid adding to the deficit. Every dollar of deficit spending is a dollar of inflation that ultimately shows up across the country. We cannot print and borrow our way to prosperity. We need sound money again, and that means bringing down the deficit. So we will, that said, we are the party of taxpayers. We will vote for every tax cut, always and everywhere. We love taxpayers, and we want taxpayers to be better off. We will offer even better ideas in the future. And as I said a few weeks ago, I'm encouraging the Liberals to steal my ideas because we have the best ideas. We've been winning the debate on ideas, whether it's on carbon taxes, inflation, housing, resources, drugs, crime. Conservatives have been leading on all of those things. And we're here for the right reasons, not for our egos. It's to get things done to make people's lives better so that they can work hard, have beautiful homes in safe neighborhoods. That's our mission, and that's what we'll fight for.
Can I ask you about main estimates? Main estimates were also tabled yesterday of $486 billion spending plan. We don't know how the money's going to get raised for that. I wonder if you've had a chance to review the estimates and whether or not you should vote on those before you see a budget and a fiscal framework.
That's a very good question. Just like Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney's spending is absolutely out of control. In fact, it's worse. Mr. Carney has proposed $130 billion of additional spending above and beyond what Mr. Trudeau had already baked into the prior budget. This is extremely irresponsible. Inflation continues to rise, and we want Mr. Carney to introduce a budget this spring so that we know the size of the deficit, how much it will add to inflation, how he's going to reverse the hemorrhaging of job losses in our country. And we're calling on Mr. Carney, who claims that he's a man with a plan, to show us the plan in one budget document. My caucus will be reviewing the estimates, David, and when we have a chance to do our homework, we'll decide. We don't want to decide on $500 billion of spending without having done a little bit of homework. So we'll have the pencils and the calculators out, and we will come back to you with a direct answer to that question.
Vous êtes un peu en deuil, Monsieur Poilievre, de ne pas être à la période de questions aujourd'hui. Vous n'êtes pas à la période des questions. Est-ce que vous êtes un peu en deuil?
How does it feel not being able to be
En français, monsieur, c'est la même question. I'll respond in both languages. Hey, I'd love to be in there. It's a great place. I love the House of Commons. I love the excitement and the thrill. And I've never really been a spectator of the House. So but I'm going to work hard to earn the opportunity to do it again. I consider it a great privilege that I've been able to do it for so long in the past. And I think the opposition has a great role to hold the most powerful people in the country accountable through question period. En français, j'adore le...
We're going to speed ahead a little bit, skip the French.
Same approach when it comes to speeding up approvals for big projects that you're taking with tax cuts. In other words, if they chip away at Bill 69 rather than repeal it entirely, would it have the Conservative support?
So you're asking if there was a bill introduced that would...
In the throne speech, there's going to be a bill to speed up approvals, one approval rather than two, deals with provinces. Is that something you would support in the name of speeding up projects, as you would with tax cuts?
The question we always ask is the proposal better than the status quo? If it is, then we support it. If it's not, then we oppose it. But I'll tell you, if Mr. Carney really wants to get things done, he's certainly not in a hurry to do it. These things are going to take a long time, even if he acts immediately. And he's talking about waiting till fall before any legislation will be passed. And he's only going in half measures. So I'll give you an example. The most direct path for a pipeline to Tidewater is to Northwest BC, but there's a tanker ban in the law. So nobody is going to start planning to build a pipeline west as long as that ban is in place. So he's got to get rid of that ban, or else we will not have a pipeline to the west coast. So where is he going to send it then? Is he going to send it up to the Arctic, to Hudson's Bay, through Quebec to New Brunswick? Well, he won't say. Yesterday, he didn't mention oil, gas, or pipelines once. Look, if you want to get things built, you need to pass very tangible changes. Very simple. You have to get rid of the industrial carbon tax, the energy cap, the West Coast shipping ban, C-69. That is how we're going to get things built. We need to unlock our incredible resources so that our trades workers get $200,000 a year jobs that will make them all better off. That's what we want. And we can be independent and self-reliant from the Americans. Thank you very much.
Ça fait juste 3 questions. Une quatrième. Sur un autre sujet, il y a une dizaine de jours à peu près...
Skip the French. Move on.
Oh, c'est le vrai menace, if I can say that in English as well. I think it really is extremely unfair that Mr. Carney is targeting the democratic Jewish state of Israel when, in fact, Hamas continues to hold hostages that continue to threaten Israel's various existence, that Iran continues to threaten Israel and the rest of us. If there's anyone who needs to be on the receiving end of sanctions, it's the dictatorship in Tehran. And it's time for the Liberals to stop trying to score political points by attacking Israel and singling out Israel. And finally, we need a stronger stance from this government against the rampant anti-Semitic chaos that we're seeing on our streets. My Jewish friends are genuinely afraid. They're genuinely afraid for their lives. because of the way they've been targeted, and we must stand up for their ability to live freely and peacefully, wearing their kippas, their Stars of David, and putting their mezuzahs on their doors. Thank you very much.
Now, the media is going off about how this, and again, previous episodes, Netanyahu with the United States got together and they figured the only way they can stop Hamas from stealing the food is to give controlled, outsource it, and then use military in order to protect the people so they can come in and they can actually monitor who's actually getting food instead of the trucks just being disappeared. And again, mainstream isn't talking about this. Now, this is going on. This happened yesterday. The Israeli defense found buildings that Hamas has been hiding the food, that they rewrap, they empty the food into these great big bulk containers, then they fill those full of ammunition, the UN bags and stuff full of ammunition, and use that, and people, normally they use women with children, so it looks like they're carrying food, but they're actually carrying ammunition to other Hamas who are hiding out in Gaza. They're trying to stop this. So the first shipment they tried ended up in chaos. It just absolute chaos because there's so many people starving because of Hamas. It's not because of Israel. It's because of Hamas. Now, and I've shown you, Hamas tries protesting in the street, Palestinians are protesting in the street to get rid of Hamas. They're afraid to do it because they get open fired on all the time, and people take pictures of them, and then in the night, they go out, hunt these people down, and disappear them. So they're scared for their lives. Now, this literally, like I said, happened yesterday. After. So the IDF pointed it out, had a couple plainclothes dressed up to help these people expose where this food was hidden. And this is the outcome.
ياجوج وماجوج ياجوج وماجوج ماتوا من الجوع حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ياجوج وماجوج حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل على كان السبب حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ازدحام من البراكس فضوا كل مدار الحاجة.
And then right afterwards, the clip is kind of missing a little bit. Hamas found them. They're racing to the scene to secure this food and the boxes and stuff that they need in order to hide the ammunition that they're smuggling throughout Gaza. And they're hiding them in the bottoms of places of, where the kids are, where the injured are. That's what they do. That's what evil does. Evil begets evil. So this is a little graphic. But this is the outcome. So Hamas found them. They're racing to the scene. They open fire on Palestinians.
بنحكي معكم من وراء الجدران. اين متخبيين هنا؟ مات الزلمه. اي مات الزلمه. مات. قتلوا الزلمه. واحد يقولوا له ابو عدي. على الطريق. طب ايش ماله؟ ايش راضي يحمل الزلمه؟
All these people want is food.
لا مقتلها اقتدروا
طيب يا خالد انا جيت واقف قبلك ايه قبل انا شوي
مالك بتزاعق
ما بزعق خلاص اصبر يا خالد صور الجواسيس هاي الجواسيس
So sad.
هاي الجواسيس يا شيعة يا ولاد الكحفة. طبعا الزلمة مات. خدوه على البسمة، خدوه على البسمة. هيا خدوا الزلمة على البسمة. قتلوه قتلوه قتلوا الزلمة.
فجار ها.
And there they secured the warehouse again, and they end up going in, and they've got a whole bunch of little clips, so I can't really paste them all together to show you. But Hamas ended up salvaging most of what was in that warehouse and there's a lot of people that are deceased now because of this. The numbers are still coming out. They don't really know. They're saying 14 to 18, and it sounds like 3 or 4 of them are under the age of 10. This is what mainstream won't show you. Don't believe anything that mainstream puts out there. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, because this needs to get out. People need to see this. And again, I'm pushing the edge. I'm always pushing the edge. My algorithms are always being bumped down, but I created this channel to get the news out. Sorry, just the facts, just the truth. Now, moving on, let's roll through some news here.
You've been listening to law enforcement officials in Minnesota talking about the sentencing of 2 men involved in a human smuggling operation that involved a number of migrants crossing from Manitoba into Minnesota in terribly cold conditions, and a family of 4, 2 adults and 2 children died. We'll get to the sentencing in a moment, but we heard the prosecuting attorney there is basically saying the defendants knew it was life-threateningly cold. They didn't care. They cared about money, and this cost a family of 4 their lives. And the CBC's Mark Carcasole has been listening in and tell us more about what we heard and the sentences.
Yeah, Andrew really drove home the point that this was a profit-based operation. It didn't matter that they were putting people at risk. These migrants that were crossing over a field from Emerson, Manitoba toward the U.S. were given winter gear, but not really enough to sustain temperatures that dropped down to minus 38 that day. And we see what happened there. As one of those officials put it, this was not just a case of smuggling. This was a case of profound human suffering. The Patel family died miserable deaths. The father trying to shield his son from the cold is the way their bodies were found. The mother near a chain link fence next to an unmanned building that she thought perhaps there would be help inside for her family, wasn't able to get that help. And we also heard that one migrant who survived the trek had to be airlifted to hospital with terrible frostbite. In the end, in terms of the sentencing, Harsh Kumar Patel, who was seen as sort of the ringleader of this operation to bring people in from Canada, have them walk across this field, across the border into the U.S. and then transported into the U.S. from there, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Prosecutors had asked for 19 years. Steve Shand, the man who transported them, was meant to transport them once they arrived into the U.S. Further into the country. He was sentenced to 6.5 years. Prosecutors had been looking for 10 plus years for him. So prosecutors did not necessarily get what they want here. Regardless, Lisa Kirkpatrick, the U.S. attorney, says justice was served today. They respect the decision. She says that a message was sent. Interesting to hear that
it wasn't stiff enough. There's no doubt about that. Moving on to the embarrassment. Just when you think you got rid of him, he comes like a little child peacock.
Some of you might think it's trivial to be picking on the shoes a former prime minister's wearing, but these aren't the shoes he's wearing walking down the street. These are the shoes that he's wearing to the speech from the throne, the one read out in the Senate, while he's in the company of former prime ministers like Stephen Harper, the justices of the Supreme Court, other dignitaries, Governor General, and King Charles III. Well, Trudeau shows up dressed mostly respectable. He's wearing a suit, as he would be required to do, heading into the chamber, but look at his feet. What's he got on? A pair of Adidas green suede running shoes. I think they're Gazelles, but I'm not sure. Anyway, that looks awful. That looks juvenile, but that is who Justin Trudeau is at heart. He's a Peter Pan who will never grow up. He's a peacock who needs to show off at every turn, and that's what he's doing here. Writer and historian J.D.M. Stewart, who's got a book out called Being Prime Minister, had this to say on X. He said, Justin Trudeau in his shoes reminds me of what Alice Roosevelt said of her father, Theodore. He always wanted to be the baby at every christening, the bride at every wedding, the corpse at every funeral.
That's so true.
What I'm taking away from this is we didn't mock Justin Trudeau too much for being a show-off with his fancy socks. We didn't mock him too much at all. In fact, we did not mock him enough. This is an attempt to show off. This is an attempt to upstage what's going on. However little he might do it, that's his intent. Of course, there's also discussion that perhaps he's doing this as a way to show that he's not like Mark Carney. Maybe this is his way of flipping the bird at Mark Carney, who, according to a National Post piece last week by Christopher Nardi, requires people in his office to dress professionally, which would not include green suede Adidas running shoes with your suit. Thankfully.
Yeah, he's an idiot. Glad he's gone. Too bad they too bad the socialists, we got too many socialists in our country. And obviously people that are brainwashed to mainstream. Unbelievable.
Multiple wildfires are raging across the prairie provinces with dry conditions, rising temperatures, and strong winds fueling the flames, creating really a perfect storm for fires to spread.
We live in a flammable landscape. And, this is our new reality. We're going to see more fire in the landscape and more smoke.
In Alberta, a threatening inferno sweeps the landscape 8 kilometers north of Swan Hills. The town of 1300 has evacuated. Officials expect windy and dry conditions to get worse, posing a challenge for firefighters. In neighboring Saskatchewan, hundreds of northern communities have been forced to flee. The largest fire in the province is 216,000 hectares after merging with a nearby campfire. And in Manitoba, 2 weeks after a deadly wildfire killed 2 people, the northern town of Lynn Lake has been ordered to evacuate. CTV's Scott Hurst is joining us now with more on the fires. Good morning to you, Scott. So it sounds like the wildfire situation in the West is quite bad. Can you put it into perspective for us, given that we're really not even into summer yet?
Marcia, it is still very early in the fire season, and we're seeing a lot of activity, as you laid out, in the prairie provinces in particular. Significant concern in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. And we know in Manitoba, the wildfire situation has already turned deadly. And now many more communities are dealing with wildfire evacuations. And this is a current map of the wildfire conditions across the country. And so we are seeing extreme conditions in many parts, as you see right there in the middle of your graphic, the prairie provinces into northern BC, as well as northwestern Ontario and Quebec. We know that there was a threatening wildfire just on the Ontario side of the Ontario-Manitoba border, as well as those wildfires that were threatening in Manitoba, those communities in Manitoba. Many people right now forced already out of their homes. Others have to be ready to go at a moment's notice. And now still there are many more people in Canada, Marcia, who are worried that this wildfire season, because it is so early already, to see these dry conditions now fueled by rising temperatures and strong winds, that creates this perfect storm, making it incredibly difficult for the men and women on the ground trying to fight these flames, stop them from spreading, and keep them from neighborhoods. But right now, we are seeing many small communities in the prairie provinces, in particular, Marcia, that are already under significant threat, where people forced out of their homes worried that there might not be anything left when they return home.
So it sounds like Flin Flon. I haven't got, that was, my phone literally just went off. It sounds like they're getting ready to evacuate Flin Flon. So anybody in that area, Godspeed, be safe. Now, Wob Canoe, I'm not a big fan of this guy, but I'm sure glad he put this out, because I'm seeing a lot of threads, and again, I fact check everything, and there's some things that I can only be like theoretical, and I don't really want to post a lot of it because you don't know if it's true or not, and there's no way for me to fact check it. But I've been reading so many different people saying they've seen people coming out of these areas that are where the fires are starting, running out with like little jerry cans and stuff like that. It sounds like this is climate zealous trying to push a narrative, or just pyromaniacs, just people with no class, no morals. But listen to Wab Canoe. Like I said, I'm glad he at least tried to put this out in the media. And every single mainstream media outlet should be talking about this, but they won't. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe.
We can't say at this point that we have an investigation that has provided conclusive proof that a given fire was started by humans. Those investigations will continue. But if we use our common sense, unless there's a muskrat out there with a Zippo lighter, without rain, without lightning these past few weeks, it's humans that are starting these fires. So again, not casting blame, not trying to shame people, but just trying to be straight up that we need to be really, really careful about backcountry travel, really, really careful about fireworks and fires in the outdoors, really careful about cigarettes, or people tell me people are smoking other things other than tobacco too, so be careful with that as well. We can't talk about intent or like a specific thing like that because maybe it's carelessness or people may not even be aware that their actions led to a given situation. But the point is, we know that we haven't seen rain recently, we haven't seen lightning, so it stands to reason that there's human activity that's leading to a lot of these situations, and it may be well-intentioned people who don't know that they're causing wrong, but let's just be really careful. We're not saying that you need to leave right now, but we're saying that that ask could come relatively quickly. And so right now, the best thing to do is to just get ready, make sure your vehicle has a full tank of gas, and if that order comes, we're going to have a ton of information about where to go and how to get there. But for now, it's just get ready. And to the rest of the province, this is who we are as Manitobans. We help each other during their time of needs. And I just want to give people the heads up before we come forward with that ask that we need you to step up. Please don't be surprised if that ask comes in the next few days.
Moving right along.
Now, what the city is calling modular units, other people would call shipping containers or sea crates. In other words, these are the boxes you see on the railway cars, or you see them in ocean freighters going across the sea. And you got to wonder, is this what we're down to? Putting our older residents into little rectangular boxes to live out the rest of their lives? It just seems a little jarring to me, especially last I checked, Canada was still part of the developed world. Well, folks, as we were filming our piece, along came Matt. He said he's a fan of Rebel News, and he told us he's in the building industry, and which is the de rigueur subject that we're covering right now. And Matt, what do you feel about this? Is this the future in Canada, that we're going to have sea crates, shipping containers, convert them into living quarters, and this is, I guess, the new version of the Canadian promise?
Yeah, it's terrible, honestly, man. I'm seeing it more and more. There's a lot of even apartment buildings that they're saying that they're subsidizing them to cram immigrants, refugees in. So I've seen it a lot. There's a lot of people that are being subsidized to cram people in these units. And this is just like another terrible example, right?
You know, that's how I feel. And, you know, I can't help but notice the dichotomy. We're on Cummer Avenue. Here we have shipping containers.
Right across what would you say the street. Look at that. Look at the real estate right across the street. Do you think these people are going to be happy?
These homes are worth on the north side of Cummer
probably $2 million, right?
Wow. You know what? I wonder how they feel about shipping containers going across the street.
I'd be honestly rattled if I had that right next to my, look out of my window and I see that.
Yes.
It's insane, man. It's honestly insane.
You know, Matt, when we were covering the Pierre Poilievre campaign, he was talking about making homes more affordable, and he gave what I thought was a very disturbing anecdote that typically it took 25 years for the average Canadian to pay off the average mortgage in Canada, but with certain housing markets, Toronto, Vancouver, it now takes the average Canadian 29 years to save up for the down payment.
I'm 34 years old and I run a business. I'm self-employed, and just to even get a down payment for a house, like, it's insane. The amount of taxes you'd have to go through to pay everything, to do everything legally by the books, it's almost impossible. And I have pity for the guys that are younger than me who, if I'm at this point, what are the 20-year-olds going to be like?
But then again, folks,
you're going to own nothing and be happy.
Alberta RCMP says 49-year-old Sean Atkinson was in Sturgeon Lake First Nation offering to pay children for sex. Atkinson is now facing 2 charges of sexual assault and 1 charge of obtaining sexual services for consideration by a person under 18. The man was released and is scheduled to make his next court appearance at the Alberta Court of Justice in Valley View on June 19th. Sturgeon Lake First Nation is located about 265 kilometers northwest of Edmonton.
It's just so sad what the world's coming to. Canada. Canada's just, we are not, it only took 10 years. 10 years to completely crush Canada. We've got a mental health problem. And it's just being made worse every day by the policies of the Liberal government, especially with the catch and release policies they've got. Unbelievable.
Throne speech, the Prime Minister having to respond to more of Trump's 51st state rhetoric after the President once again turned to Truth Social to say it will cost Ottawa $0 to join his proposed U.S. missile defense system, the whole Golden Dome, if Canada joins the U.S. He also went on to say Canada is considering the offer.
All right, that prompted the Prime Minister's office to put out a statement saying, in part, the Prime Minister has been clear at every opportunity, including in his conversations with President Trump, that Canada is an independent, sovereign nation and will remain one. And for more on all of this, let's bring in Global's Reggie Cicchini, who joins us from Washington once again this morning. Reggie, good morning to you. And after the president had been relatively quiet regarding the 51st state, here we are once again hearing from him. Do we think, because there's a lot of conjecture this morning, that maybe the King's Throne speech yesterday perhaps triggered this?
Look, it's possible, Jeff and Carolyn, that there was something in the speech that might have, triggered something in Donald Trump. But there's also a possibility here that this post to social media were just thoughts from within the executive residence. And that's because Donald Trump
takes off. And you know what it was? And I could tell because I read piles of posts and threads from a whole bunch of different people within that administration. They were laughing at the media, not necessarily just Canada, but a lot of the American media that had picked up on this and were saying, ha ha, look at that, Carney and Canada's king laid the line down, not in so much words, but he did it in such a beautiful, subtle way that put Trump in his place. Yeah, no, it didn't. No, it didn't. Trump is Trump. This is all just fear-mongering propaganda. This is all propaganda. Now, there's an arrest warrant issued for an accused in a axe attack who failed to show up for court in Vancouver. Stephen Henry Hall, 30, is facing 1 count each of robbery and breach of probation. A Vancouver provincial court judge has issued a warrant for the arrest of Stephen Henry Hall after he failed to appear for a scheduled court appearance on Tuesday. Hall is 30, accused of striking a stranger with a small axe earlier this month before stealing his sunglasses. He's charged with 1 count each of robbery and breach of probation. Vancouver Police Patrol officers arrested Hall May 13th after the 50-year-old victim was found bleeding from his face near East Hastings and Main Street. Blah, 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 blah. No picture, so kind of sad. But if you do know of this person, Stephen Henry Hall, make sure you call the police. Let's get this guy off the streets. And then one last thing. This is good news.
Pat Timkier here with some good news to report. Back in January, the Waterloo Catholic School Board made a decision prohibiting the public from recording their board meetings. This was a decision of the Director of Education, not the Board of Trustees. So in February, we wrote to the board warning them that this move was unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has held that the right to freedom of expression includes the right to make audio and video recordings. Not only that, we warned the board that that recording actually enhances the democratic accountability of the board, and that if they didn't change the rule, they could face legal liability. A trustee, Conrad Stanley, brought a motion to overrule the Director of Education's decision. Well, on Monday, that motion passed. Trustee Stanley explicitly relied on our letter in arguing with his trustees about why this was necessary. And so now the public in the Waterloo region is again free to record board meetings. This was a quick turnaround. In only 3 months, we've seen a meaningful change. And so we're pleased to see that the democratic function of the Waterloo Catholic School Board has been enhanced. And it's all made possible thanks to our donors.
This is all because of the woke policies. They were hiding what they were actually doing, and people were getting really choked. So they started actually going in and recording it. Even during some of the live streams, people were kind of trying to hack into them in order to try and get what they were saying, because it's supposed to be public knowledge. And then they found out that they were beyond leftists. These people were enablers for deviancy of the SEX nature, not good. So more and more people were trying to get in there, and they want to see that this is the right of the parents to see what they're doing to their kids, what programs, and who you voted in to be sitting at these meetings. So this is a huge win, and now this is precedent, and this is going to start following through to a whole bunch of other schools, mostly in Ontario, who have banned people from actually being part of the meetings or recording their meetings. So again, huge step, great job, nice to hear. Anyways, I'm going to call that an episode. If you are new to the channel, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Check out my merch. Just opened a store here 4 or 5 days ago. I've got more merch coming on the way. Been spending lots of time learning this designing software in order to create some really cool clothes. Until the next time, I'm Alias to Guy. This is Canadian Citizen Journal. Stay informed.